This is going to be another episode of Summoning Insight. Something witty, something referencing something a long time ago, perhaps an annoying extended intro that doesn't yet address anything, followed by an awkward segue to Monty for some sort of shilling. But today, no shilling. There you go.
We're just New Year, no shilling.
You don't need any shillings anymore, Monty. We're already past Christmas. That's a reference
that's true. I spent all my shillings, and so did you. Don't worry though, guys. We got plenty of new sponsors coming in this year to annoy you with more shilling later on.
Yes,
but we've decided to give you a break.
And good content, because here's the problem. I'll fully admit, I mean, I was caught on camera in 4K. I did lie to you all. Not really. That's a joke, obviously. I intentionally misled you. I misled myself, by the way, into watching the movie Batman Returns, didn't I? I tell you what, we all regret that. Like, I've actually learned my lesson. No joke, that has actually rocked me a bit, Monty, because obviously I'm pretty famous for having a very good memory, right? And part of having a good memory in a way is, you travel back to the moment you experience something, and it allows you to sort of access it and go, right, this is good. But, well, the problem I've realized with that one is anything that, like, there's a certain cut-off date in my life, if it's before that sort of watermark, I have to reconsider these things. I'm like, if that movie is actually as trash as it was, and you can see it on LFN Culture Channel, then I have to rethink a lot of movies from that era, mate. I thought, I'll tell you another one. I'll just throw this out here now as a freebie for you. I'll tell you what I watched over Christmas, mate. I watched fucking the original Gremlins. Oh, Lord, has that not fucking aged well, mate? That's a fucking terrible movie.
Oh, really?
That is,
I haven't seen that really in bad, probably 20 years.
It's another one I thought, lighthearted fun, it's Christmas, what could, who gives a fuck? Like, no, that was bad. That was another bad one right there. Didn't hold up. Did not hold up.
It's actually funny you say that, because I was about to watch that movie and then decided not to.
Oh, no, but you know what, though? Here's the analogy. The analogy is, though, the actual, like, creatures in Gremlins are T1 fans, though, because here's the thing, right? When times are normal and T1's not winning, they're all lovely, right? Or if you say T1's the best, like, when T1, like, in spring of 2022, Monty, we all acknowledge they were the best. They were, like, the best team in the world. They had an awesome style, right? When we're saying they're good as well, T1 fans are like fucking Gizmo. They're all cuddly, like, fake, yeah. But then the second you, like, remember the two rules: don't give them water or feed them after midnight. So don't let them get to a world semis, or for God's sake, win the thing. If you let them do that, they turn into these demons, don't they? They're like, little fucking evil entities, just torturing you for the rest of your life, ruining everything. Just ruining everything that's good. Because you'll have seen this, Monty. It's one thing, like, when the Brazilians get enraged in Counter-Strike every time there's a major and Alex says something about a Brazilian player. The difference is they get mad for like 2 days. You'll have seen this. Those T1 stands, it's like they put on their hard hat, and their, like, side job now is just commenting on our content about how we're all haters. Like, they'll be commenting on, like, the YouTube video with, like, fucking Counter-Strike with Maniac, and they'll be like, well, as long as he doesn't talk about T1, I guess it's okay. It's like, guys, like, the party left weeks ago. What are you doing? Bro, they won Worlds in, like, November or something, Monty. It was fucking ages ago now. Like, they're still going. They're still going, these guys.
I like how our last episode was about the greatest teams of all time, and, like, there are still people arguing that this iteration of T1 should be named the best team of all time. Hey, they might be eventually.
No, I know what you mean, by the way. It's actually plausible, because obviously they can have another year whereas no one else has got that extra year. No, but the maddest thing about that is this, Monty. It's one thing that they're like, JDG isn't the best ever, or maybe they want some past SKT. But the idea this SKT is the best ever, it's like, not right now. Like, that's the biggest problem always notice with the real stan. Not just like someone who enjoys someone who's a stan, is they can't really themselves know how ridiculous they appear when they say something like that. Like, if you say that, by the way, think about this if you're a T1 fan. I hope this sentence gets through to you if you actually think this T1 is the greatest T1 ever, right? Don't you guys low-key hate Chovy and think he's overrated? Then think it through, dumb fuck. You don't want this T1 to be the greatest team of all time, because Chovy be doing work against this T1 in LCK finals. Like, I'd go ahead and remove that one, because otherwise you're actually making a mega case. If this is the greatest team of all time with all that experience, you're making the case Chovy's like the best individual player ever, you idiots. Like, he's fucking doing work, isn't he? Like, if you want to hate on Chovy, you've got to have it that, like, he can't get to the best team ever. That's in 2013 or something. It's inaccessible to him, Monty. Like, by the way, actually, low-key, that was actually the one we did slightly sleep on that episode, because what we kept forgetting was the undefeated split after, didn't we?
Yeah,
we kept forgetting the 2013. But luckily, we did include them. But that one actually is probably the sleeper one when I was thinking back on that episode.
Yeah, the 2013, because after 2013 into 2014, the problem with that roster, Thorin, and again, the black marks against them, is that they fell off a cliff super hard with that roster in spring and summer. Like, the peak was crazy, from like summer to the end of winter when they reverse swept KTB into the Worlds run, and then the undefeated split afterwards. But it was a pretty brief peak, all things considered. And then they became real shit after that. And then they got
I remember
dumpstered.
when they lost in like fucking NLB to like a bad Frost or something like that. Everyone's like, Jesus Christ, what's going on here? Like when it actually was Coco and all those boys, like, those days. By the way, there's a sad thing. You know, there's an aside, well, obviously all the off season anyway. You know, that was actually an idea I had a while ago. I did a video on this like maybe like a year and a half ago. I thought it was a banger idea, Mel, because they obviously had this system now in Europe where we actually had proper tiers to the system. Like you had LEC and then you had those ERLs and especially you had EU Masters. And my suggestion was just make EU Masters like NLB. So like when you drop out of LEC and you're not top 4, you go in there. Because I always thought that was actually a fucking great concept, wasn't it? Where you got, because what you would see in those, if you remember, Monty, is one, you'd see people who just couldn't play under pressure. Like maybe they're actually dope, but just with less pressure, they could win. And then secondly, you would see the next talents coming through because, you know, it had like the semi-pro element where you could sort of battle your way through the open qualifier or whatever. Like that was actually a pretty cool fucking system to that. Because think about this right now. Everyone now's commenting on all the reckless and like T1 challenges thing. None of you are going to watch Challenger. You are never going to. Guys, you don't even watch fucking Frederick Brion play Kwangdu Freaks. Like, you're not watching fucking T1 Challenger. So not only that, but to watch him play Janna, I don't think so. Like, there's not even anything to that. No one watches people play Janna. I don't know. I was a massive Gorilla fan. No one watches anyone play Janna. What are you talking about? It is a derisable character.
Yeah, and it's also below even the amateur level, right? So you don't even get English commentary on it. That's gonna be a rough watch. I do like the the NLB idea. So for those of you who don't know, because he was referring something that happened like in 2013 and 2014, so 10 years ago now, was that basically because OGN used to structure champions as a series of tournaments, when you got knocked out, you had a chance to kind of like enter into the later bracket stage of the amateur competition. So you actually got to see some like pretty decent like mid-table teams at times going up against a bunch of the semi-pro or like amateur teams. And it was fun. It was fun. It actually made the finals of NLB very interesting a lot of the time. And it would be fun to see LEC teams after they get bounced off of, like bounced out of groups, because there's 2 teams, obviously. And one of the complaints has been, well, they don't have anything to do after that. Well, what might be fun if there are some concurrent like ERLs running during that time or EU Masters to insert them into some of those matches. Would be interesting.
Or just use them in like a third-party tournament in general. You know, would be a cool idea, right? If they were suddenly available to, I mean, this would take a whole you'd have to rejig the whole circuit. But if people like an IEM wanted to reinsert themselves to the league, you give them those players. You know what I mean? Give them like 2 players from LEC, give them a team from whatever LCS when the playoffs happens or whatever, and they're out of the tournament. I think there's so many ways you could retool the circuit.
Yep. Yeah, it would be interesting, but I hadn't thought about that, and I do like that concept.
I would ask you a question, by the way.
Sure.
Right? Normally, I don't really, in general, care about what like fan reaction to content is. Like, if people don't know, it's not that like we don't care. It's that it won't help us make the content. Like, as much as you might naively think that this is like bespoke, custom content, if I actually made it specific to you, the random viewer on Twitch or YouTube, but I made it too tailored to you, it would actually make it worse for everyone else. So it's not that we don't care. It's just that we know we have to kind of like make it the way we make it. But what I would ask you is this: weren't you a bit underwhelmed by the response to that best team ever episode? Because, you know, like the one that we did about the best players ever had a very good response, actually. Like, that was treated the way I hoped it would be, which is like, if people don't know, mate, to even make an episode like this is impossible in League of Legends. Like, there's only, no joke, about 10 people I think are even capable of like hanging in the conversation, because you have to basically be able to talk shop on like essentially 4 major regions for 10 years. Like, it's pretty, you're already restricting it quite a lot there. But even worse, a lot of the people that you would want to have just will openly tell you, like, maybe they don't want to do it. Like, it's too much pressure. Like, I know people like Emily Randitzer in the past, when I've suggested to them, like, do a list like this yourself, they'll always tell me, like, nah, but, you know, I'd have to, like, rewatch a lot of games, or I don't feel comfortable talking about this. Like, the problem is, to even make that content, I actually think is very hard. It's high concept. You have to actually have, like, a deep fucking bag. So the idea that, like, basically people told us to shove it up our arse and not a single one. Like, this is how bad it's got now, mate. Let me just give you a little quick breakdown for you, because I always do this in Counter-Strike. So in Counter-Strike, right, the reason why it's actually a somewhat reasonable angle to say I know nothing about the game is, famously, a detail about me is I was never a pro. It's actually strange, by the way. I've had a very blessed career that I was able to do all those majors and championships. I was never a pro player, and I'm the analyst. Like, that role is designed for analysts. Well, it's one thing if you say I know nothing, because I didn't have a pro career. But they say Yanko knew nothing, and Yanko was a semi-pro, right? Then they say Kassad knows nothing. Kassad coached a fucking Australian team to semi-finals of a major. Then they tell you that fucking Maniac knows nothing. Maniac played in the semi-finals of a major. And then they tell you Pimp knows nothing, and Pimp actually beat the 87-0 fucking NIP on LAN on their best map, 16-2. So what my point is, at the end of the day, you just eventually realize this is just an exercise in fans waiting until 3 years after they know someone and they're too familiar with them and just telling that person they know nothing about their chosen craft. So apparently, guys, if you're a casual fan, are you ready to have your mind blown? It's not that Thorin doesn't know anything about League of Legends. Dom and Monte also know nothing about League of Legends. So that last 10 years you all put in, waste of time. You know, even Dom, for fuck's sake. You are aware Dom was like a cunt's hair from Worlds about 4 times. Like, you can have that one. It's a freebie, Dom. Like, it's outrageous. Like, these people, if my point I would say is this: if these people don't know League, what's the chances you, random guy on Reddit or YouTube, in fact, know League the best? Like, you're the secret sage of all eras who knows fucking League. Because, mate, I can understand people disagreeing, but people, like, almost rebuked the premise of the episode. Like, the idea, like, people, by the way, hate the idea we were going off eye test as well. They despise that so much more. Even though I don't get it, because what I would say is this: if you don't go off eye test, what are you going off? Aren't you just comparing, like, but is a championship in 2013 better than... You're always comparing something. I don't really get why people were so outraged by that one, mate. I get that we had, like, a different take. Like, I'm sure it was unpopular to be JDG was the best ever, but I thought, like, the premise would be well received. It's a fun concept. It's important, isn't it?
Yeah. Look, I think over time, you know, that episode will be
age well, right?
Yeah, it'll keep, like, people will still view it because it's one of those, like, evergreen pieces of content. I mean, the players one continues to get views even to this day, and we did it like 2 years ago. So I do think that one will keep going in terms of, you know, up and up and up in terms of viewership. But what I will say is that it's really hard to have those conversations because, you know, you're going to be biased just based on memory to more recent events, right?
Oh,
and you're also going to be biased because the game is simply more complex now, right? So when we talk about the best team, there's so much more that teams and players understand about League of Legends and the ways the game has changed, you know, in the last 10 years of play. So you want to give credit to teams that are, like, technically more advanced. These players are building off of a decade worth of metagame and different skill that the players have gotten over time. So I think it's, you know, when you look at JDG, it's pretty easy to see that this is a super team that was created, and it is a big stain on their record that they didn't win Worlds with this super team. But again, because of the format, there are a lot of problems. And, you know, a frequent argument that brain dead people say is like, well, they didn't win Worlds, which is the most important tournament. My question to you is, why is it the most important tournament? Because Riot told you it was? It's certainly not the most competitive tournament, and it really never has been. You know, either Korea domestically or China has been more difficult in almost any year you can pick. So it's really hard to say that we should be honoring Worlds because we really, like, shouldn't. And then the question is, when we have the eye test, like, you have to use eye test to say how close was this team to their competition? What did they learn about or invent about League of Legends that other teams took from later on? So it's a really hard conversation. And, like, I don't think JDG was the most innovative team in terms of, are we going to be talking about things that they invented in 5 years? Probably not. The thing is that they were just so polished on what they did well. And it was like they were the best fundamentals team you could probably ever ask for. And that's what was so crazy about them.
I do want to highlight one thing to you though, Monty, just to tilt you. I'm basically going to use Jat's technique to defeat Samsung White, old school reference, which is I'm just going to tilt him. So there was this one comment I did want to read, because the other thing I love about haters is when they attempt to just be, you know how I'm the esports historian? They just attempt to be a historian of you, but then they incorrectly tell things that never happened and you never said. So This is brilliant. It's actually quite an upward comment. Right, are you ready? This is going to tell you so hard. The guy goes, during Worlds 2014, so put it in mind, Monty, Worlds 2014 here. During Worlds 2014, I specifically remember Monty saying something like, if you think Samsung White is good, wait until you see blue. They're better. Which is like, if people don't know, that's basically like the opposite probably of whatever he said. And there's no way it's true because famously Monty did predict before the tournament even began that Samsung White would win. So what's great is, even though it does sound like something you would say, you definitely never said it. It's completely fantasy. This memory is just regurgitated.
So it's funny that this gets mentioned because so every year, guys, there's a stream on Twitch that does all of the world championships back to back to back before World starts.
Okay.
So every single Worlds, it's like 10 years of Worlds now. It has to start earlier and earlier every year. So now it starts like a month and a half. It just runs, right? Just runs.
Oh,
so
the entire Worlds, every match?
Every desk segment, every match. So you can tune in anytime you want, and you can just watch. And it goes from... I don't know if it starts at season 1. It definitely has season 2. And then it goes all the way through whatever the last Worlds was. And it's every game, every desk segment, back to back to back to back to back. So you get all the context as well. So it's funny that this was mentioned because I happened to tune in this year to the 2014 World Championships and catch the desk segment that I was on before the tournament started. So it was the intro desk segment to the tournament. And I specifically said, I think Samsung White is going to win the World Championship in that desk segment. And I was also on the record for saying that in my shows and everything else. Yeah. But it was very funny. I literally say in this desk segment, I know Samsung Blue has beaten Samsung White in all the best of fives they've played this year. But Samsung White is currently better and will win the World Championship. So, I mean, I saw that this year. I was sitting there and I was talking to people in Twitch chat about it because I was like, lol, I was right. People were like, oh, you were right, Monty. Like, and so it was just funny that I happened to tune in at that specific moment in time. But I can say categorically, I didn't think that and I didn't say it. And immediately before the tournament started, I said the opposite of that.
Yeah, but unfortunately for you, someone who isn't you and has none of your qualities misremembered it and is retelling that story. So actually, you were wrong in history. So what a fool!
Well, it's just very funny because like I might have, I would have said, well, maybe I said that, but I can tell you definitively from watching that segment this year that I in fact did not say that. So yeah, that's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. But yeah, I think look, people don't want to hear it. The plebs want to believe that Worlds is important because Riot tells them that Worlds is important, or that Worlds is the only thing that matters. Like, just because Riot gives it prestige doesn't mean you can't use your own brain and say, does it deserve the prestige that it has?
The one that's really killing me is this, right? So you know how only in something like a few months back, I'm going to say like 5 months ago, they introduced like monetization to Twitter. So you actually literally do get paid based on tweets that have like a certain amount of virality based on if the ad gets served to the person viewing it, basically, right? Well, the problem with that is in the modern day now, in theory, people can like rage bait on Twitter. And if they, especially if it's political shit, they can make loads of money. But obviously back in the day, you didn't literally make any money. You just got like clout, which is like fake internet points, right? So actually, back in the day when people used to say, for example, that all I do is bait on Twitter, it's like, that's not true. Like, what happens is you just don't agree with my opinion, so you think I must just be like pretending to believe that, but actually that is my opinion. So one thing I can't handle as well about this approach is, holy shit, when people talk about like fucking these different teams and all these angles, right? You know this dumbass take that goes like this, that me, you and Dom are farming like, I don't know, attention, money by saying T1 sucks. Like, one, it's how you know T1 fans created this conspiracy theory. No, I know, but that's like their premise. The reason you know this is a T1 created conspiracy is because it's like TSM fans back in the day. You know when they used to say the same thing, Monty? That they don't actually like TSM. They're just like fucking, being contrarians for the clicks. Like,
I mean,
TSM
if I'd have made a video,
suck, though. No, but if I'd have made a video like top 10 TSM players of all time, it would be my most popular video, obviously, wouldn't it? It would get like insane ad revenue. So the same concept, like, you do realize the way to make money in a clicks and attention would actually be to celebrate T1 winning Worlds. Like, the joke is, me doing a video saying T1 was the best team of this year would make way more clicks and money than the one saying JDG was secretly the best. Like, that's the weirdest thing about the sort of counter backlash is it implies like we're cynically making money, but we're not. We're doing the opposite. We're actually doing the thing where we like risk our reputations and get told we don't know anything about the game, and then don't get fucking upvoted videos. They get downvoted because we say that a different team is good, not T1. So like even if you dislike us, you have to understand we are actually genuine in our opinions. Like we're not just baiting our whole fucking take on the game. Because also, by the way, like I say, it wouldn't even work. Like you actually wouldn't get more out of it. You'd get more if you sort of told the line that T1 was the best and Faker was the best this year. That would actually be like a slam dunk. All the casuals, I think, would just pour in and love that content, wouldn't they? Like if Theon made the article now, like Faker's fourth or whatever, it'd be like his biggest article ever, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. And as we said, I think that this iteration of T1 has been very good. It's just that they choked a lot and they only won 1 out of 4 domestic titles. And that's rough. And they didn't win either of the MSIs, and that's rough. And they lost in the World Finals, and that's rough. I think if they had slightly better performance than any one of those, they would certainly be in that conversation, but they didn't show up like to actually place first.
The second one was the spring one. If they'd have won this spring one, it'd be way more like reasonable, I think, because that one was the one where they looked like the shit. They looked good in that one.
Yeah, or if they won MSI,
True. Yeah.
There were a lot of options. It's not like they've lacked opportunity, and they've been consistent enough to get top 2, which is certainly something. Like I think they are in the conversation right now, and they are going to have a longer window because no other team that we talked about has had a 3-year window with the same roster. So considering they have another year, they've got another shot to do it.
Here's the thing. Obviously, since it's off season, there's already so many topics swirling around. Like, spoiler, there wasn't any created in the last week or so. There's not that much news going on around LCS or LEC. But obviously, one big thing that did happen, and in lieu of doing a 4 horsemen in the future on it, was obviously like MarkZ becomes. I'll let you be called that since it's your name. I call it MarkZ. MarkZ became the LCS Commissioner, which, by the way, even sounds like a fucking, like AI-generated meme headline in esports, doesn't it? Like, that just sounds like some fucking esports express. Like, we're looking at the emails of Riot. Like, oh, Mark, you're the new commissioner. Like, as a headline of a Gmail, like that fucking meme format, like Doublelift's inbox or whatever. Like, it sounds like a joke, but it is real. So there's obviously a million angles to this. So here's the first question, Monty, which is, we've obviously discussed many times before. I think actually the main area that discusses, like, well, ironically, aside from Hotline League, whether there is a commissioner, who are they, what are they doing, etc. What do you actually think of this announcement? Like, what's the big picture reaction for you?
So the reason why we didn't get to this, guys, is that it happened. So we had last week off. Then we were doing a historical episode with Dom that we were just discussing. Then before that, it actually happened. The announcement happened like the day after we did our Summoning Insight. And also, I would have needed more information, which I now have at the time. Like, I would have needed more information at the time. But now, due to various announcements that have come out and MarkZ discussing it on various pieces of content, we can actually have a more thorough discussion of what this is. I mean, the first reaction, and this is going to take me a long time to explain, so bear with me, guys, is that he's not the commissioner. He's not. That's not what a sports commissioner. What his job is not what a sports commissioner is. So what a sports commissioner is, guys, is in an American sports league. The commissioner is the person who is chosen by the teams that own the league to basically be the operator, the president of the league. Okay? That means that ultimately, even though the owners can vote in certain ways to influence the direction of the league, it is under the care of the commissioner. And the operations of the rules, the operations of everything are under the purview of the commissioner. Now, obviously, you can't change rules without, it gets very complicated when there are players' unions, because the players' unions have to agree oftentimes to the rules of the league. It changes from league to league. So there is like a back and forth between the ownership group or the commissioner who's representing the owners and the players' associations, the unions that exist to protect the players. So let's be very clear right now. MarkZ is not the commissioner of this league. He was chosen by Riot. He's not chosen by the constituent teams because the constituent teams do not own the league. He is also not the final authority. He has about 1 million people above him in the Riot hierarchy, and he does not have the actual ability to enforce his will onto the LCS.
His title should probably just be spokesperson, right?
Apparently his internal title, as he said, I believe was product lead, which makes a lot more sense. And, the commissioner has an entire office underneath him. And the question that should be asked about MarkZ is as follows. How many direct reports do you have, which are people that you are the boss of? Because I am betting, Thorin, it's like 0 to 2. If I had to guess, I don't think he has a staff. And normally what should happen is the commissioner should have league operations for the LCS underneath him. He should have the sales team and sponsorships and production, and he should be the top guy. This is the position that I had at Flashpoint, by the way, when I was commissioner. Also, it was a team-owned league, so I was selected by the teams like a sports commissioner was, right? So if he doesn't have any direct reports, and in fact, he has a chain of bosses, because the question is, can he alter the rules of the LCS? Can he alter the format, or does he have to receive approval from a bunch of people? Does he actually have production underneath him? He doesn't. Spoiler. So what is he actually going to do? And the answer to this is be the spokesperson. Like you said, I imagine he will have some small ability to kind of decide on content potentially, or like the tone of the show. And I think he'll be good at that for what it's worth. I think
the irony is, I actually think if you lay it out like you just did cynically, actually it's a great hire for what Riot want him for, because it's just a familiar, friendly face that you like. It's even someone, by the way, who used to, just by virtue of his own role on Hotline League, be presented as like a champion of the people who's going to like set things straight. Then that's the person explaining to you what, as Monty's pointing out, probably he didn't decide is just happening anyway within the league. Like, it's quite clever marketing, actually. Yeah,
it is. It is. He's not going to decide anything. Yeah. And you know what? They didn't want that person. They didn't want that person. When they posted this job, one of the things that is required in the state of California right now is that you have to post like the salary range for any job that is posted in the state of California. And the salary range that was listed, I believe off the top of my head, it was 170 to like 240 or 250.
Fucking hell. Okay.
Which, by the way, considering that one of the preferred qualifications for this job is that you have a JD, as in you are a lawyer, 250 is basically the entry point for lawyers in big law as a first-year associate. This is somebody who's maybe like 24, 25. Right? 26 maybe. 250 would be the entry point for a lot of big law. So any good lawyer that they had is probably not going to take that job. If you have several years of being a top tier lawyer under your belt, that is like not a lot of money for an American lawyer. So it does kind of, I'm not sure who exactly applied for this job. Either you're kind of like a bum ass lawyer, or you want to take a pay cut, or you are not a lawyer, right? That's kind of the people who would be filtered out, I think, by that salary range. Now, what I will say is that if you're MarkZ, this is fucking excellent, man. You're getting paid more than any of the Riot casters at this point in time, because the Riot casters don't make a lot of money, and you have benefits, and you're full time. Remember, by the way, guys, remember what happened to Dash? Dash wasn't making $250 a year from Riot. And so probably at this point in time, I don't blame MarkZ for taking this. In the middle of esports winter, if you can get in where you have severance, where it's actually difficult to get rid of you from this position, so you don't just get your contract job. Because remember also that MarkZ made a post a couple of years ago where he was lamenting. Remember when they were doing that experiment where they ran like 10 analysts on the broadcast for LCS. And Mark said, hey, they're cutting, my days, which, by the way, you only get paid for the days you work. And so I think it was very financially hard on him and other analysts who had been on most of the broadcast days to like go to 50% of their days. And so I think he sees this opportunity and says, oh, well, this is a chance for me to advance my career, to get paid more money, to have a more secure job that's more difficult to fire me from, where I get benefits, which they don't offer the freelance casters, obviously. And I have a chance to do more kind of content direction. And I think Mark probably was pushing a lot more bizarre or like experimental content. And we've seen that in some of the broadcasts. What is it? It's like Catching Up with Double Lift was the segment, the kind of like non sequitur, awkward humor segment. He enjoys that kind of stuff. Not my jam, but I know people like it. And so I think he will definitely try and make the broadcast more entertaining. And I think he'll do a good job at that. Like, I think that having somebody like him that is going to push the envelope and really try and mix things up, because the LCS is in a viewership death spiral, and you can't keep doing the same thing and think it's going to fix itself. So I think he should just throw all the crazy ideas out there that he has and see if anything can fix it. So maybe that's an answer. But he is not going to have any kind of authority. And, to your point, Thorin, I don't think Riot wanted anybody who's going to fight with them. You know what I mean? Like, I think that the dipshit chain that is above him, because remember, these are all the people who made the choices about the boring ass format that everybody hates, the effects of franchising. These are all the people who made those decisions. They never left Riot. And so I think they actually just don't want somebody who's going to really push the envelope that would roll back or change decisions that they made, because it's going to make them look really bad. Like, if they come up with a sick format and it revitalizes the LCS, those people are going to look like dumbasses. And I think a lot of them, there's a lot of ego that's involved with the people above him, and they don't want that to occur. So I just don't think that we're going to see massive systemic changes to the LCS, even if MarkZ wants them, because those people are not going to allow it to happen. And now he has so many people above him, going from like CEO of esports to the person in charge of global League of Legends to like League of Legends Americas. And it's just like, there's so many just layers of shit above him that it's going to be very difficult for him to meaningfully change anything. And unless League Ops...
My problem with the whole thing is basically just like I won't do a whole thing, because I did a whole massive answer on Side Select about this exact topic. My problem is you're obviously looking at it from like, what are the expectations from Riot? Like, what's practically the case here? And then functionally, what will MarkZ do, and will he be okay at that, right? Where you set it up, I don't disagree with the premise. My problem is I'm just looking at from what I want the commissioner to be. Sure. And in this case, most of the time, I think of commissioner and I think of them putting out fires. I think of them having a problem. Like, if you're Dana White, like, oh, what's that? Your champion John Jones has just tested positive for steroids. Or if you're in the NFL, someone just did a hit that might have like endangered someone's life. Or in the NBA, did this person bet on games? Or, like, the problem I have is that's where I really see the job of commissioner is important. It's like, one, what do you say to the public? And then two, like you say, what power do you have? What can you actually do? Can you actually affect change? Can you do these things? And the problem I have is this. I think in a very rare example, his public work on shows like Hotline League and the Blame Game have essentially disqualified MarkZ from doing exactly that job. Because normally I'd have to speculate, Monty, what would they think in a situation like Danny? He's putting on fucking record that it's all just systemic. And essentially he even says in that video, not that we shouldn't like call out specific people, but then we all know the context that the specific person was possibly a friend of his, but was literally Travis's former girlfriend, the channel he was even uploading the video to. So the problem I have is, if he's going to be that MarkZ, I don't want that MarkZ making these decisions. Like, spoiler, I don't think it's appropriate. I actually think, by the way, it's disgusting. Like, we're even using almost like, you'll know the reference to this, Monty. Like, if you remember, in the Bush era was when a lot of this terminology became super sinister for like euphemisms. Like, it really was all just casual, civilian casualties instead of like, dead people from a missile we fired into them innocent. Like, it just became all these euphemisms that took the sting out of it. So when you say that thing of like, it's just systemic, like the esports industry's challenges of dealing with autistic people, that sounds great until you realize you're just excusing some specific people we know being an arsehole to someone and actually like seemingly coercing them in a really unfair way. That actually isn't, I wouldn't say, a normal approach in the esports industry. That's not something that happens often. So that in itself disqualifies him a bit. But I would just say this, unless you've got something on that angle, I think the bigger angle, because there's lots of laughs in this, is obviously the whole Travis out of nowhere cameo element that was involved. So do you have any thought on that, MarkZ, about the fact that he probably won't actually investigate any of the cases?
So here's the thing, Thorin.
I wonder if this means the Danny case. Like, none of those cases are ever getting done, guys. Forget about those. You may as well forget those ones. Come on.
The other part of the clowns that are above MarkZ is that he's going to be the scapegoat. You know, if anything happens again, they're going to tell him what to say, and then he's going to say it. And they're never going to take responsibility for the decisions they make about cases like Danny. Because here's how you know, guys, nobody's taken responsibility for the case of Danny. You know, in previous iterations of League of Legends at Riot, they would ban people forever from League of Legends esports.
You'd think a minimum on the precedent set, at a minimum, you'd think Nicole Jameson would have had like an official ban for being a team CEO or something, right? Something like that. Of course,
you know. That's standard operating procedure for what Riot has done in the past. And guys, it doesn't matter if EG sells their spot. You don't know if Nicole LaPointe Jameson is going to get another job within the ecosystem. And Riot has a history of issuing either temporary or permanent bans against people for doing these things. So my question is, if the law firm investigation is done, why isn't there anybody out there who's saying, well, these people need to be banned from interacting with players from the Riot Games League, like esports ecosystem? Valorant, League of Legends seems perfectly reasonable to me because that's what they've done in the past. So it's very strange that hasn't occurred when it has occurred in every other scenario. And yes, there is a new kind of bullshit way that they go about this, which is like threatening people, which is what they did to G2 after Carlos's thing, right? Where they just say...
You could also imply based on that, at a minimum, they should have, even if they were leaving, forced EG to at least, like, you know, for the sake of, like, how would you call it? Like, fucking, almost like just for the gesture, make a step down. You know what I mean? Even though she left anyway. But, you know, it's just a gesture. You'd think they'd, like, say they were punishing her or something, right? Like Carlos,
Yeah, and like the thing that they did to Carlos was simply just not offer the G2 a Valorant slot, which is also just like... I mean, the punishment was there, and they didn't actually go to the extra length of saying like, oh, Carlos should be banned. I mean, Carlos shouldn't have been banned for what he did. Let's be clear, because he didn't actually do anything that hurt anybody at the end of the day, which is very, very different from what EG did, which did actually cause legitimate physical and psychological harm to people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I find it very weird. But at the end, like, you know, I think MarkZ is what he's actually going to do is he's going to have almost no employees, if 0 to 1 or 2 employees underneath him. He's going to make content and do some work on the creative side of the broadcast, and he will be trotted out to be the mouthpiece of these problems without actually having any control about the way that they are put out there, which is probably a good thing, because his own thought process, as you're saying about these, is just to say, oh, well, it was systemic. We shouldn't call anybody out. I have no obligation as somebody who has a voice and authority within this industry. I have no duty to actually just call a piece of shit and apply public pressure, even though it's my own content and my own show. And technically I could do these things. Nah, that just happens everywhere, which, by the way, MarkZ, if this is a systemic issue, you should be appalled and you should be ringing the alarm bell everywhere if it's systemic, right? And the question also is if it's systemic, why haven't we seen a lot of this? Because it's not systemic. It's not, guys. And like, otherwise, you think that Thorin and Richard Lewis wouldn't be digging this shit up every single week if it was systemic? No, the reason why this was a big story was because it wasn't systemic at all. It was a specific incident with some very bad faith actors involved.
Yes. No, that's actually the stupidest part, is like there's plenty of cases of people who, by the way, probably even are autistic or in some sense on a spectrum or have social issues or just aren't very good with like communication skills with being mistreated in esports. But like you say, the other ones are systemic. They are just like, you know, they had a manager that didn't understand that or something. Like this was so specific and pointed. And when we dug into it, it had literal cases of people just telling someone like, play the game, or like, well, coercing you with like weird logic.
And the coach is literally trying to get get the owners to do things. Like,
I've never seen anything like that before. The idea that's like on like record, you can get it all corroborated, like some like campfire story. Like, there's the other thing, as you've now seen, because Rich Lewis keeps putting these articles out, guys. There's one now about the expenses that Nicole LaPointe Jameson was spending. Like, what you'll find is this is a rare case of where, like, once we initially picked at the sweater, the whole thing unraveled. Like, eventually, loads of people with an EG were coming in and Rich, like, with more info and documents and emails, and so like that's so rare that ever happens. That we really did just like strike oil there in the middle of a field nowhere. Like you say, normally it's very mundane, like just basic negligence is how people get mistreated normally. This was actually quite specific, like I would call it almost like cruel and unusual behavior by some of the EG management.
And just ask yourself these questions. Why would literally dozens of EG employees have given over these stories? You know, that's not normal. That you're
independent in theory as well.
Dozens of people were so disturbed by what they saw that all of them went independently to journalists. That is not common. That is not common in any sector at any time for any company. Like, things have to be really fucked for that to happen.
But anyway, check out Richard's latest Substack article, because yes, indeed, Nicole LaPointe Jameson do be flossing. Indeed. And that wasn't just a joke, which she was bragging about all those EG videos. She indeed was just balling out of control. Even at the end, when, by the way, checks notes, people were being laid off. Pretty rough, if you ask me. But okay, here's the area where we can mine it for laughs, though, because even though in theory this story should have nothing to do with Travis, except Travis is a friend and, you know, was it like maybe even a roommate at one point of MarkZ, and, you know, and now MarkZ is the commissioner. No, for some weird reason, out of nowhere, there really was like, wait a minute, is that Travis Gafford's music? He became some side cameo character in this story, because what happened was when the story came out that MarkZ gets the gig, Jacob Wolf, who people will know from past episodes, including the Four Horsemen episode we did where we referenced Travis Gafford and journalism, obviously, like Richard, doesn't really like Travis very much in a journalistic context and think he's done some like sort of shady behavior, or that he's a bit like, I'd say, self-aggrandizing, like he does a lot of things for himself or to build up his own image and his personality. So basically, Jacob revealed that Travis Gafford had applied for this job, and not only this time, like he'd applied in the past for this job as well, and he wanted this particular gig, which itself we could get into. It's pretty obvious. I mean, you think of Travis, he has been around LCS his whole life. It looks like the sort of job he would want, even though he's always said he doesn't want to work at Riot, like as in to be exclusive for interviews. It is esports winter. There can't be that many gigs. I think actually on paper, the joke is, I mean, this is a side thing. This is like when Travis, who sucked up to the Reddit mods a million times, got fucked by the Reddit mods. It's like, bro, these people never reward you, mate. You're always Renfeld. You're always just some fucking creature like, please, master, and will I get eternal life to it? Like, they never give you it, mate. Like, they always wreck you at the end. Because in this scenario, the joke is, actually, Monty, if we're going to go by what we talked about earlier, Travis is actually the perfect person for that earlier job, to be the fucking sellout shill guy to Riot, who they all tell behind the scenes, like, look, in your statement tomorrow, be sure to go easy on this aspect here. Like, and then, oh, sure thing, boss. Like, he actually's a shoe-in from Central Casting to do that role. So the joke is, if we just address this initial thing before we get into the Jacob Wolf thing, in a way, I actually see why that's like an obvious thing Travis would potentially go for. I actually think like it sort of would make sense for him and Riot. I think they'd actually get a lot of that relationship, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree with you, but MarkZ can do that exact job, and MarkZ has the relationship with the producers and the other talent and like the creative acumen to actually do the content side as well. So in a way, like MarkZ is a much more qualified person for the role that they want than Travis Gafford, because Travis Gafford can literally only offer being a mouthpiece. That is all he can offer in any capacity at any point in time. We see it as the way he does interviews with Riot's executives right now. And he claims all the time, oh, I'm very critical of Riot. You're not. You issue mild criticism. You never say, oh, this person is the problem, or this decision is incredibly incompetent. You just say, I don't like this aspect. Please give me an interview, sir. That's all you do. So, you know, I think that's really his only skill. And he wasn't going to like improve or bring any kind of zany ideas to the structure of the broadcast or anything like that. And he certainly just doesn't have the relationships with the Riot producers and the you know, rapport with the talent to pull it off. You know, if you're going to ask your talent to be uncomfortable or like do something they haven't done before, they better like you. I'll put it that way. They better like you. And I think, you know, MarkZ is a likable guy. So I think I think like there's that aspect to it as well. I don't know if Travis would bring the same level of actual creative concepts to the broadcast. So, but yes, to your point, I agree.
Here's where it gets accelerated as a story, and then we'll arrive at our final destination. We'll get all the thoughts. So basically, after that, though, this is where the drama had to crank up to another level. Because then, after Jacob Wolf, remember Jacob Wolf's like esports industry awards winner, considered one of the all-time great journalists, etc. What he says should count. Like, actually, you should know what he's talking about. He's supposed to be an insider to the industry, obviously. He not only said that he applied, but then there was the clapback where Travis came out and in a video, like, look, he even said himself something along the lines of like he let people assume something or some weird phrasing like that. But essentially what Travis did was try and rules lawyer him and be like, but I actually technically didn't like apply officially though through this, you know, I didn't submit like an email with a form. But essentially, so the whole thing just became, right, because I will say it, that is still bad for Jacob Wolf if you're a fan. Like Jacob Wolf essentially there has spoken out of turn and he's at least implied that Travis has applied through the official means, even though he has just said applied, and so he could always walk it back and be like, I just meant, you know, he put his name out there in the mix. And so the problem with that is essentially that's just the whole thing about how the industry works. Like, put it this way, if me or Monty wanted a job like that, we would never apply officially, would we? Because we get declined. What we do is we do what Travis presumably did, which is you reach out to someone you know within the system, and then you say to them, like, look, would I be in for this job or not? Like, keep my name in mind. And if they just tell you straight up, like, look, I'll keep your name in mind, but no one else will take you, you don't get the job, then you won't waste your time at doing the application. So, like, obviously this whole thing is a bit like, it was like a technicality you got Jacob Wolf on. So I want to know what your thoughts on this whole thing is. Because on the one hand, obviously, look, it's easy to jeer at Travis for wanting to do this when he's been a bloody journalist for all these years. In theory, somewhat of an antagonistic role. And then obviously there's the whole Jacob Wolf thing of like, I think where he's fucked up is, obviously he did know that Travis in spirit has implied or unofficially, but what he's done is actually a mistake a lot of like more inexperienced journalists are making at the moment, which is you just make the story sound a bit better by like leaving it vague enough. You might have like more info than you do. So I don't know about that one. I thought everyone looked bad on this one. It's like a rare case, Monty, where everyone sort of stepped on a rake and it went in their face, you know.
It was funny to watch from the outside.
I was loving it. It was Godzilla, let them fight, wasn't like,
yeah, exactly.
Just do it.
You know, watching the Twitter and video monkey knife fight that happened was entertaining, amazing. I have to say. Because like I didn't know, obviously I don't know or care who applied for the LCS commissioner position. It's just kind of like whatever. So because I think the job is just a poison chalice. Like your only two choices are you get actual power. Like the job itself is cursed because they're the only things. You actually have power to do things in the LCS, but the LCS is just fucking unfixable and in a death spiral, so you can't win. Or
wait, I should point out the point I forgot to nail was this. The reason why both Jacob Wolf, and it was actually also, I forgot, Rich's Wrath said it as well. Rich, yes. I think, was the first one to suggest he'd applied, and then Jacob hopped on and was like, he also applied last time, right? So I forgot this. The reason those two people actually are bringing this story forward, guys, isn't even anything to do with the MarkZ thing. It's that they're just laughing at Travis because what it looks like, if you're an industry insider, is Travis was there the whole time. Like I say, almost angling for like this exact type of a job for 10 years, Monty. And then it's like his like kid brother who he let like hang out with him. They were just like, actually, who's that guy behind you? Yeah, we'll pick him. Take him for the job you were supposed to have. That's why essentially Rich and Jacob are laughing at Travis, because it's like they're just sort of donking on him. That it does look a bit like Riot sort of clowned him with this hire, right?
Yeah, like cucked him.
In a way they did though, because it's like, look, we need someone from that room you're in, Travis, just not called Travis Gafford. Like, well, bloody hell, how many people could there be? You know what I mean?
All right. So let me put this out there. Like I said, I think this job is a poison chalice because your only two options are you actually have authority, but you actually can't fix the problems because you can't. Nobody can save LCS basically, or the other alternative is that you're just a mouthpiece for a bunch of morons and you make some minor creative decisions, and that's what MarkZ is. So, but with the Travis Gafford thing, I agree with your take because look. To become commissioner of Flashpoint, I didn't submit a fucking job application. You know what I mean? Like, I knew all of the owners of the teams who then advocated for me and wanted me to run Flashpoint and gave an offer to me to do that. Like, I had a contract that they offered me with a salary and everything like that. There was no application process. It was because I am close with a lot of the various team owners and they trust me to be a good representative for them and to operate this league. with a lot of other people, including Thorin, who was there as the creative director, right? So this is, I would say it would be unusual for Travis to like just submit a job application without at least like kind of putting feelers out there first to see if he would get it. So what probably happened was he did probably inquire with people at Riot about this job in a conversation. And then they said no. And he was like, well, why would I waste my time? And then from that point on in his video, he said that he didn't tell people that he hadn't applied and that indeed his crime was allowing people to believe it or being vague in conversations.
Okay.
Because now, why would he do that? Why does he do anything? I mean, because he has a massive ego and he couldn't take the ego shot. Here's the other reason that Travis would have never applied. Because unless Travis was going to get that job, Travis would never actually submit an application that he did not believe 100% was going to be taken and he was going to get that job. Because he himself could not take the ego hit of rejection.
Oh, you think you couldn't handle it if they just said no? Like, sorry, this time your services are not required.
I find his story very believable, Thorin, because I don't think he would ever apply to anything that didn't have 100% certainty of him getting the job offer.
Basically, Monty, here's the analogy for you. It's high school and the prom is coming up. Travis doesn't want to get his heart broken and be publicly rejected by a girl, so he's asked that girl's best friend, If I ask Janie to go to the prom, will she say yes? And if Janie's friend Susie had said that Janie would say yes, then Travis would officially have asked her at the fucking whatever, the mess hall, the fucking cafeteria. But since fucking whatever, Susie said that Janie wouldn't say yes, that it was going to be a negative, he didn't bother asking her because he didn't want to look like a fool in front of everyone, did he?
Exactly.
But somehow at the end of this, I don't know how this part works, at the end, it still ends up with Travis Gafford having MarkZ spill pig's blood across him at the prom.
No, so what happens is this.
There, pulling the bucket, I guess.
What happens then is that Janie then goes and tells a bunch of other people that Travis was going to ask, Travis intended to ask Susie to prom, right? Yeah. And then those people took it as Travis asked Susie to go to prom. And then they told everybody.
Some little guy who's like a loudmouth, a little kid, like hall monitor, was like, hey, I heard Travis has asked Janie to go to prom. And Travis was like, hey, I never asked Janie.
Exactly.
But I did allow people to think I did. And then the little fucking I was like, what the hell? I've gotten roasted. What the hell? Exactly. That is the analogy.
And that's
someone make that cartoon. Make that cartoon, someone.
And that's how stupid esports social media is.
It is. But you notice how all scenarios involving drama and esports just work better if you make the analog just literal high school drama from America. Like, it's actually ridiculous. It's just Degrassi or some shit. Like, what even is this garbage? I don't know.
Yeah. And so
say it by the bell or something.
This is why I didn't say anything on social media, because it's just the whole thing is just stupid. So I'm just sitting there laughing at the whole thing because it's so stupid.
Exactly.
And like Travis,
basically, here's the other analogy for you: is that Travis thinks of himself as Zack Slater from Saved by the Bell, and Bayside High is the LCS, and he wants a particular job, president of some role, and instead they've given it to fucking Screech. What's sad about that is, one, straight fire reference, but two, that's some shit from the 80s that nobody even remembers. So I probably don't have any audience for that joke. It's pretty good though, if you know the references. It's all lined up. It was good.
So, Thor, the funniest part of this to me is it just showed everyone's like psychology around this issue. And this is just hilarious because it's like Jacob Wolf doubling down on it in a very weird way via Twitter.
Yep.
And then Travis has to make a video explaining this, which, by the way, he could just literally say nothing.
It's actually for real as well. It's almost like he's exploiting the cynical YouTube meta, because you know the famous rule, Monty, it used to be like 8 minutes, but I think it's 10 minutes. You have to get to 10 minutes or something to put the ad in, right? And he like reveals the like vague part at like minute 20 of this 20-minute video. And it's like the whole thing was just to get you to get the ad view or something like that. Ridiculous. That's what it felt like almost. Because it's like I said, it's like a 21-minute video and he reveals this at like minute 20. It's like, just lead with it, you fucking cunt. Just lead with it already.
So like, I don't really understand why Travis thinks he has to make an entire separate video about the fact that he didn't apply to a job that he didn't get, because clearly he didn't get the job. And like, Travis, are you going to make Are you going to make a bunch of videos about all the other jobs you didn't get? I mean, the premise is insane. And so here's the question. If you didn't apply for it, then why do you even need to say anything? All you just have to tweet is like, I didn't apply for that job. I don't know what people are talking about. The fact that there were obviously shenanigans afoot because these other people were saying shit that you had applied. So they had heard something that was at least somewhat legitimate. There's no smoke without fire there. People didn't make that up independently of each other. And then why is this? Why do you need to make a video if you just didn't apply? It makes no sense.
Also, Travis has played himself, because here's why we're glad you didn't get the job, Travis. Not just for all the other reasons that you'd be corrupt and you wouldn't do the things and you've already shown that you deal with the teams and riot and bias manner. That all goes without saying. The real reason I'm glad you didn't get the gig is because if you were the LCS Commissioner, then how would I get those awesome videos? Like, guys, I just heard this right now. I haven't done any journalism on anywhere cross-referenced it or like got any insight, but here's what I just heard 5 minutes ago from not Steve Arhan did a Korean barbecue. You know what I mean? Like, mate, you do those all the time. Like, you won't be able to do those if he's the commissioner anymore. By the way, as an aside, though, I've got a very quick rant for you, Monty, because what you just revealed there, and this is actually quite funny about the whole Travis Jacob Wolf thing, is everyone in the industry understood what we've just described about Jacob Wolf's position, which is like colloquially he is right, but in like the letter of the law, he's sort of like misspoken and spoken a bit out at school there, and probably did imply knew more firmly than he did about this case. Even if in spirit, I think he is accurate in what he said, and it's not like he's wrong. The real problem with this whole topic is you have to, like you say, know what it's like to actually be a true insider in esports and to know that you can just reach out to people, you can have these convos without going through official channels. Because what you're actually giving away here, Monty, is the people who, like me, are esports. If you're just someone who works in the esports industry, you can't do these things. So here's the thing, guys. You think because you've worked in the esports industry, you are esports. Or I have LinkedIn, or I went to this conference. No. Being in esports, here's what being esports is. Being esports is never even having a LinkedIn, because that's not even how you get your gigs. Being in esports is never actually reaching out to TOs. Like, can I work the events? Because they reach out to you because you're box office. Being in esports is not hearing a rumor about a player doing it. The player just tells you he's doing it. So that's like there's levels. That's all I'm telling you guys. There's levels. You're like at the beginning of the game, you're inside the world. Like in this analogy, we're like mates with the coders, and we have like god level fucking mounts. And I'm not a MMORPG guy, so I'll stop this analogy there. But whatever. We have legendary mounts and all unique goblets and shit. I don't fucking know what like games are like. It's the way my actual alias historian, but I look down so much on people who play like World of Warcraft. I don't know why it's ridiculous in some ways. I've only just realized in this moment I haven't really got a leg to stand on that one, have I? Whatever.
Just some 40-year-old guys talking about. That's right.
Being esports, when you don't have to do all those things, you get the gig no matter what. You get the gig anyway.
That's right. But being esports is being 40-year-old guys on a podcast that's been running for 10 years talking about Korean teenagers and then actively looking down on World of Warcraft players.
Yes. And then also, to be fair, this is like a rare moment of lucidity we're all having it. Then doing stuff like going, Monty, these fucking Koreans are taking this like their fan worship of these like video game players way too far. Anyway, let's just argue for the next hour about whether someone's fourth or fifth all time on the list. Like, we're just as bad in some ways. The difference is we're more entertaining, at least. You know what I mean? Like, we're all deep in the sauce at this point in time. We're all lost completely, you know. Because the one thing, I've actually told this story before, but I'll say it again. There was one time on By the Numbers where I had the same moment of lucidity where I was laughing because I told Richard and Sam, I was like, guys, have you ever seen this? And I pulled up one of those clips of that thing, Farming Simulator, where really, guys, it's real. It's a real video game where you like do things like you have a tractor and you do all. And I was joking and laughing so hard, going, look at this. They have like a veto, like in Counter-Strike with the maps. You can like veto like the equipment. Like you can like stop the guy having like a John Deere tractor or whatever. And I was laughing until I had like a moment of lucidity where I realized, wait a minute, how is that any different than me just talking about like Overpass being vetoed in Counter-Strike? If you don't know Counter-Strike, actually, it's just as bad. Like the joke is anyone watching Counter-Strike thinks the same thing, Monty. Like, what the fuck? What are these losers doing? Like, it's actually just as bad. We're as bad as it is, guys. We are as bad as Farm Simulator. Like, and also the joke is Toby doesn't play Farm Simulator anyway, so it's all he does play.
Yeah. No, I actually thought Farm Simulator Esports was pretty hilarious. I apprecited the fact they did it.
I have to say,
John Deere started sponsoring people.
They would be. Yeah, the graphics are way better than I thought. It's actually like look pretty good. It's just a bad concept, isn't it?
Yeah, and there was like a John Deere sponsored team. Like they were paying people. I appreciated it.
I'd love it, by the way, also, if there was some guy who was like the faker of Farm Simulators, just some Amish guy. Although, obviously, the irony is he wouldn't be able to use a computer, would he? But he'd tell you what, he'd be cracked out other than that. He'd have all the game knowledge and everything.
That's all right. He'll be the shot caller. He can coach the team.
There you go.
So yeah, I do think the whole Travis applied to be commissioner fiasco was absolutely hilarious.
It's funny as fuck.
Just because it was like everybody behaving exactly as you would expect them to behave.
Yep.
And being just as ridiculous as you would expect them. Because the whole thing is just so petty. It's like, why do we need to have an entire internet drama about a person who may or may not have submitted an email application with a resume and then didn't get the job? Like, do we do that for any other position in esports? No, but it's especially funny also, in this particular case.
Why do people keep doing this thing, Monty? Because I think it's the wackest piece of sophistry ever, but it works somehow. Like, they'll do a thing. This is kind of like what happened with me with that Wooloo story, where I had like one side detail that I guessed, that I even said, like, as far as I know. And I was wrong about that incidental detail, Monty. That wasn't in any way like, you know, a structure within the rest of the story. Like, the rest of the story was about a team going off what an agent said and signing a player. It wasn't even about the player I mentioned. But people do this thing in esports where they think it's a gotcha, where you essentially say like, hey, I've got evidence that you murdered someone on the 28th of January and there was a guy in the background with a blue t-shirt, and then they're like, he was wearing a red t-shirt, and then they think they've like gotcha'd, and you're like, wait a minute, that's not the relevant part, though. Like, you murdered them. Like, no. But if he was wearing a red t-shirt then, and then they do this thing, this crazy leap where they go, so everything you say is called into question. So it isn't, though, is it? Like, what? Just I got one incidental deal. I don't think it somehow makes all the rest wrong. But like, that is like the gotcha, because that's what Travis's thing was. It was like, oh yeah, well, I might have actually, like, in every way except officially applied, but I didn't apply, did I? So, and then it's like he thinks he's in good one. So how you like damn apples, Jacob Wolf? It's like, it's not really, you haven't really got him. Essentially, you've admitted to what he said. Like, you've actually made it worse, Travis. You've officially acknowledged that you did try to get the gig. Like, this is even stupider now. It's so, the whole drama was so stupid.
Well, also,
the problem is, Jacob Wolf, his thing is this, right? Normally, he is a very professional individual who has a certain stuff, but I've noticed with him, it's key people who bring him down. Like, obviously, he just has a past beef with Travis for some reason, doesn't he? So, like, that's one of the ones that just like drags him down a little bit into the mud.
Yeah, he does get triggered.
But, for sure.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny though.
It was great. It was great. So I'm not sure what else we got to talk about this week, guys. We're not going to be dipping into Demacia Cup at all because, guys,
I mean, the lineups are all bonkers anyway as well. So
I mean, a lot of them are.
Usual, those cups mean nothing because, like, spoiler, like if you go and look, it's like top esports, like a totally different lineup playing like a team you've never seen ever in a million years. Like,
a lot of them are running their real lineups for this next year, but the problem is that because of the way preseason has worked, we actually, you know, the teams are all practicing on the new patch, right? Or they're in Champions Queue, or they're in, like, you know, they're on the PBE, right? And so none of them are actually practicing on the old patch really, outside of maybe some solo queue. But basically, Riot really fucked up because, again, the holidays get in the way of them actually launching the new season, and we didn't actually have a preseason this year. So we are still not actually on the patch that the next season is going to be on. And by the way, guys, I think it comes out on the 10th, and LEC starts on the 13th. So there's going to be no time with all those map and objective changes and all of the item changes before we immediately start pro play. So it is going to be a clown fiesta. Like, everything is just going to be really, really messed up. And I'm not sure why they decided not to actually release the preseason this year. The pro teams have had access to it, but it's still different when your practice is split between the live realms and the actual massive changes that are incoming. And we haven't, I'm trying to remember the last time that this occurred. It's been a very long time. It's been a very long time. So, like, they can practice on the tournament realm, but they're and like privately, they can do in-houses, but that doesn't always give you the best data. And oftentimes in solo queue too, especially with itemization, when you have like the 1,000 monkeys at the 1,000 typewriters in solo queue, or you have like the one tricks on the ladder who can figure out unique builds for their like best champions, it really does actually, help move the meta along. So we're gonna have a very limited amount of time, like less than a week before it goes live, until professional matches start. So it'll be interesting. But anyway, that's why I don't really think it's worth talking about, because it's not going to be reflective of actual professional play when it comes to this coming year. And also the time is nigh for us to...
I'll just say this, as someone who's seen all of them, Monty, Demacia Cup, NEST, obviously in Korea, they used to do the fucking Kesper Cup. These are the most notorious upset fucking, like, magnets of all time, Monty. Like, you remember the maddest was Kesper Cup. Dude, Kesper Cup was won by that fucking Ever team that wasn't even in LCK at the time. Like, there's been some wild, because it's off season, people just play pretty loose, if you notice, in these games. Like, they don't really play like it was Worlds or the LPL playoffs. Like, they just kind of play like it's an exhibition game. So you also get some really wacky results that you can't really believe, You can't put any stock in them.
And Champions Queue is also Champions Queue, and a lot of teams, if they are figuring out stuff in private scrims that is different than the current meta, they're not going to obviously reveal that in Champions Queue that everybody's going to be there to watch, in the same way that pro players don't always reveal everything in solo queue, right? So I think that there's going to be a lot of chaos at the start of the season, which will be interesting. I don't think it's very good for competitive integrity. To have the release of the new, like the season patch, the season 14 patch, so close to the start of professional play. But that's the current situation we're in. So we're kind of just holding in a holding pattern until we get the actual, real results coming through. So, yeah. We can, however, do some viewer questions. Unless you have other topics that you'd like to discuss.
Let's do it. Let's go for it. We'll do as many as we can this time.
Yep. We will get through all of your viewer questions as promised during these off seasons. So we're going to take a quick break, guys, and we'll be back with that.
Right, we're back for viewer questions. If you don't know, viewer questions are generated by people who have subscribed to our Discord, which is one of the best ways you can support us, because just directly we get most of the money. So if you want to do that, check out discord.gg/LastFreeNation. Subscribe there. We have a channel where you can submit the questions. And then obviously Monty picks out, in theory, if some of them are crap, we filter them out. But if not, we do as many as we can. So we're going to try and do as many as we can now, because it's obviously an off-season episode.
Also, guys, for those of you who participate in the Grog coin stuff, we have all of that sorted. And so you can expect reimbursements shortly. So what this means is once you receive your reimbursement, even though you have been grandfathered in on asking questions, that privilege will be removed. That was until we got your money back to you. So once that happens, you can subscribe on Discord and support us that way, just like everybody else. But thank you very much for doing that.
Just so people know, the saga isn't over. Like, we will absolutely close that out, and it was always on the back burner, etc.
Yeah, it took a long time to sort through all the receipts. Let's put it that way. I had time over the holidays, so Merry Christmas to you.
By the way, as a random aside, if people don't know, that is actually one of the things that caused us, just as some transparency, that's one of the things that caused us some delay in what we've been doing with our company, is that unfortunately, at the time when we did that approach of having a token and all the people bought in, essentially we're not experts about crypto. We just thought that was worth more than it was. And we didn't understand, for example, when you're the only one with the sort of creator pool, as it were, when you sell down, you don't really get the initial amount, because as you sell down, it devalues it. So essentially, it's not a big deal. Like, we learned our lesson from it, but that was something where, like, it was an idea that had good functionality. Like, obviously we got to do these questions from it. It's just, the point is, it wasn't kind of like as obvious what to do with that and how it would help us financially. So it was just a bit trickier to navigate as all. Also, that's why we did it, and then it didn't. And it just ended up not being the right one for us, so we just moved on to this project instead. Just subscribe on Discord instead.
Yeah. Also, Rally.io shutting down was a big problem.
Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah. It was not entirely in our control, so I think we would have kept doing it otherwise. Do you have any movie suggestions that are emotionally heavy to watch? One I can give is Manchester by the Sea. I mean, there's a lot of emotionally heavy movies. One of the saddest movies ever is Grave of the Fireflies, which is a Studio Ghibli film. That is extremely heavy. I don't know if I'll ever watch that movie again. It is so deeply sad. You have any?
I mean, look, an immediate one off the top of my head, because even though I'm a massive Christopher Nolan fan, I have actually only ever seen Interstellar once in the cinema, because I know that, like, that scene where he like gets all the old all the old recordings of his family, and he sees them all like age in real time. That is like fucking super heavy shit, mate. Like, that's like, I'm not watching that for fun. Like, I can rewatch something like that once or twice. Same with, by the way, almost any classic war movie. What's that one like fucking Don't Look Now or whatever that one? You know, that one with that like kid from Eastern Europe gets like wrecked by the whole system of like East Germany or whatever. That one's brutal. Let me think. Oh, if most of fucking Lars von Trier's work is like fucking really heavy shit. Think about like Breaking the Waves or Dancer in the Dark or something. It's all shit where it's like, it's worth watching once and it's worth going through that experience. But I think to me, it's like, I don't even know that it's cathartic. I just think these things are like incredibly like fucking. That's why heavy's the right word. They're just fucking heavy to deal with. So, there's lots of movies like that. But I noticed a lot of sort of like Asian cinema, for example, has a lot of like tragedy involved in it and stuff. So, yeah, stuff like that, I'd say.
Have either of you had a content piece where a guest or co-host broke you as badly as Thorin broke Dom on the BDLS episode with Yamato? Was this the skateboard chicken episode?
Might be. I can't know. We've done a few with Yamato, so I can't remember. There's been a few, though. There's been a few. The key thing is, if people don't know, what he's essentially referring to is when you've had someone be a co-host for long enough, you just know all of their like buttons and what sets them off. And so if you set it up right, it's why like earlier, I purposely set it up to Monty that I was going to tell him that question, where obviously if the one thing if there's one thing we could say categorically never said, it's that Samsung Blue was going to win Worlds 2014. But like, if you don't know specifically how it's going to trigger him, it's not going to be as good as it. So I don't know actually on this one. Like, what else is there where someone's completely broken here? Because usually it's got to be something a bit out of nowhere, you know what I mean? Like, by the way, there's loads that where like me and Richard have done shows.
I was going to say, like, the old by the numbers, you guys, were.
Of course, yeah.
I've seen episodes where you lost it on that one.
No, there's some really good ones on those ones, some really out there. Like, because with those ones, since it was like a 3-hour show every week, you can imagine you just generating like so much shit that's forgettable. But out of that, you'll get some bad. Like, I'll give you an example. There was one that actually I think came from doing the No Majors Club, but we did it loads on By the Numbers, which was there's this player from a team called Hellraisers in Counter-Strike back in the day. And he was, I think, from Hungary or something. He was a player called Dead Fox. And basically, we just noticed he had that weird thing, Monty, where his head is normal sized, but his actual like features are like really small in the middle. And so then we took that and made it as a joke that he had a tiny face. And it got sort of control that at the end, someone had made an image where it made his face look like a tiny little like postage stamp and his head was huge. And like the memes just got totally out of control. They took a life of their own on. So those are the ones that always crack me up, where like it just like reaches some deep cut back, you know.
Anytime you were talking about Red Eye, for sure.
Of course. Oh, that Red Eye Christmas one or whatever, when we did all the singles. That was pretty good, wasn't it? That could have been like a full skit. That was good, actually, wasn't it?
It was very funny.
You know what's sad, by the way? As a random aside, because I never actually thought about this before, but I would have done it. If people don't know, another reason it's so tragic that Flashpoint, for me at least, was 1 year, and it was these 2 weird online tournaments, and we never got to do like the real lands that we wanted to do, is it was absolutely a plan in the future that we'd have done stuff like bring Richard Lewis on if we could, of course, like in some capacity or beyond the show. Yeah. So, like, the idea eventually was that it's actually one of the only things, Monty, that I do miss about Flashpoint is being able to hire people you think are dope in the industry. Like, think of some of the people I know now, like fucking Geo and Valorant, or there's people in, I can't say who right now, but there's people in Counter-Strike who are always getting fucked over by the TOs, and I always think like, shit, man, I can't do anything about that anymore. Actually, I used to be able to just basically contact you and potentially hire you, but can't do that. That was one of the cool things about that gig, wasn't it? Actually, be able to sort of like spread the wealth in a legit way in industry.
I mean, worked especially with Potter, right? So
yeah,
Maui Snake, yeah,
for sure.
Are TSM an early favorite to win Worlds? By the way, nobody's ever talked about that. Where the fuck is TSM? How is that not a massive story? It couldn't be just Reggie lying.
Do you have an answer for that last one, though? Do you have an answer? Do you have one where someone broke you on a podcast? What's like the most out there moment for you? Do you remember one?
It's probably that.
It must be one where like Dom or Dora someone got you.
Oh, I mean, it's probably like that Emily Rand episode where I was still drunk from the night before.
Sure.
And I was just going crazy about Chaos Style with LPL.
Sure.
I was definitely still drunk, guys. I feel bad about that because I went crazy.
No, but that is also low key. That's the part that a fan maybe won't understand. Is in some ways, it actually usually the best episodes are from something like someone was on a fucking heater from some other shit, or they're annoyed about some like when you come in with that righteous like indignation. Usually is when you do get the best rant or some hilarious moment happen. It's just like in that scenario, obviously it's a bit awkward on it. Oh, to be fair, by the way, I will say this. If anyone watches that episode, she has come leaps and bounds on fucking camera since then. Like, that was when her and Kelsey were mad ropey, but they're actually good now. They're actually, like, fucking they can chop it up, yeah.
So, yeah, TSM, where are they at? Where are they? Couldn't be Reggie lying to you guys again. I was told they were going to participate in a major region. I mean, it's just nonsense, right? Like,
dude, I get the vibe for real. Like, are they actually just going to sell the whole org? Because the only game they're in, as far as I know, is CS, mate, and they have like
Apex,
a shitter team
Apex
in CS.
Legends.
Like, oh, there we go. Well, they're not in any of the big games I know, though. It's mental. The fuck?
Yeah, I mean, their real business is like the Blitz app and the websites anyway. So, I mean, I don't know what value really their esports division has at this point in time. They don't even have really any major influencers outside of like Apex now, Apex Legends.
Think about it, they don't even have fucking Valorant, mate. That's another Riot game. They don't even have Valorant. So there's none of the big Riot games right now. It's ridiculous.
Can I get some post-rock recommendations? Well, this is Thorin, not me.
All right. Yeah, sure. Right, let me just open the folder. I'll tell you a bunch. Basically, spoiler, if you've never looked into this particular genre, most of it is from, because the original group was that Godspeed You Black Emperor, most of it's just their label. They have a label called Constellation Records in like Montreal or whatever. And the joke is, it really is like, the joke is, this sounds more like Monte's scene, but it's all these people who are like artists in Montreal where, you know, one plays a fucking accordion, then another one plays a fucking harmonica, then one plays the violin, then one plays a rhythm guitar. And then what they do is they just have loads of like side groups that they're all in. Like there'll be one that's like 3 of the people from Godspeed You Black Emperor. There'll be one that's like 2 of the others and a different guy from another group. So basically everything on that label is going to be within this, but I'll pick you out a few quickly. So like Godspeed You Black Emperor is the classic starting point. My favorite one is the group called Explosions in the Sky. Silver Mount Zion is a side project within some of the people in Godspeed You Black Emperor. I've often referenced in the past, there's a Christian one from Texas, believe it or not, called Lift to Experience, which is very good. Actually, they did a couple of albums. If you want some more classic ones from the genre from other places, there's the band Low, who've done loads of fucking albums, if everyone knows them. Mogwai, I just referenced Gremlins earlier, the Scottish group Mogwai. Mogwai was what Gizmo was, if you remember. They're actually like a classic group for that shit. Sigur Rós technically is within this genre, probably the most famous example of it. Let me see who else. I like a group called The Album Leaf. Just I think the bassist is pretty good in that one. And I'll do one more. There's one called Esmerine, which is another one from the Constellation label as far as. So there you go. There's a bunch to work with. There's a lot of good stuff there.
Similar to Foreplay, can you do a podcast about anime in which one week you analyze a critically acclaimed show like Monster and another week roast an anime that plebs herald as a masterpiece but is in reality hot garbage?
Here's the problem with that is like it would just take too much time for like actual animes. Do you know what I mean? Like if it was one movie, you could do it like for the gag, but like put it this way, not even for the guy. Like Richard Lewis isn't going to watch 30 episodes of a shit anime so that he can then have to say it's bad. Like that's not his cup of tea. I can tell you right now, it's not his cup of tea.
Yeah. So guys, when you start watching the Culture channel more and we can be freed from the bonds of esports, we will watch a bunch of shit anime and roast it for you.
Well, eventually can do it, yeah.
Yeah, it's really like, guys, we're coming up on a season where I'm gonna have to watch like 40 or 50 hours of League of Legends VODs a week and do 6 podcasts and run the business of LFN and have a family. So, you know, there's only so much we can do. And also I have to do all the stuff for the Culture channel as it is. And it's going to be hard. So I would love to do that kind of content, but I can't do it while I have to watch a ton of League of Legends.
By the way, is your current family situation known publicly, Monty?
Yes. I'm gonna have another kid this week.
So people don't know Monty's about to have a second kid as well. So there is that too.
Yeah, there's that. And in true Monty fashion, will I be back for next week's Summoning Insight? The show must go on. So I think my first kid was born during Flashpoint. I think it was gone for 2 days, and then I was right back on camera. So no, my wife has posted about that. So yeah, that should be happening. Okay. That should be happening in like a couple days. Hopefully everything will go smoothly. And then by a week from today, I will be back on this show. Are either of you familiar with Loldle? It's a League of Legends equivalent to Wordle. How many 5-letter words can there be?
The problem is, I've never done the Wordle thing. By the way, what is that? It's essentially just like you get a clue and it's a word, and you get some of the letters filled in, and you guess what it is or something. I never got that like social phenomenon, mate. It wasn't for me.
It is actually a fun game, but you basically just have to guess a 5-letter word in the English language, and so you start with one word, and it tells you if the letters are either in the word or in the right space in the word. So then it's a puzzle to figure out which 5-letter word it is. Loldle, I'm sure is not that.
It just doesn't sound that interesting. It's just words about League of Legends, I'm guessing, right? That doesn't really
it's
sound
probably
that cool,
some other kind of game. I'll take a look at it. I'll take a look at it and see what it is. As you both work minimal desk events these days, has this impacted your ability to develop new relationships with people within the scene? How has this changed from the start of your careers, especially when contrasting grassroots IRL interactions versus now where you're established and people know who you are and what you're about? I mean, we know all the people in the scene. The thing is,
but I think that the key thing is what he said at the end of the question. He sort of answered his own question at the end there, Monty, right? Like, essentially, if we weren't already established, it would be enormous. Like, you wouldn't know some of the newer people. You wouldn't know. But like you say, we're sort of like part of the furniture of esports. So the real joke is, like, at this point in time, beyond, like, if you went to a Couch-Strike event and we did Flashpoint again, and I had Tech Girl, okay, maybe now you'd get to know her as a person, but you could easily reach out to her on Twitter anyway. You know what I mean? Exactly. So the point is, like, I actually do think we've gone beyond that point. Like, that's maybe for like less experienced talent in there.
Yeah, it's also that there's been very little turnover, frankly, with talent. Like a lot of the people that we worked with years ago are still working. So there just really aren't that many new people. And especially now in esports winter, like there just aren't going to be that many new people. And most of the new like up and coming people we invite onto our shows anyway. Right? Like they at least get an invitation. Now, not all of them take it, obviously, but we try and get people onto our content that are on the rise so we can get to know them and get their perspectives. And we find that interesting. So, I mean, if anything, it's actually easier because we can just do it remotely now rather than having to go to an event where they may or may not be hired. We can choose the people that we want to have these conversations with. But frankly, I mean, events are a lot of work and a lot of downtime, and I don't really miss it. Like, you kind of miss the energy in the stadium or whatever, but if you've done it like 100 times, it's not that big of a deal anymore.
No, here's the thing, Monty, because I know everyone does get this. You know what it is like the Worlds, like for example, at Worlds when it was the JDG T1 match, Monty. Obviously, when you're watching that match, you have FOMO of like, oh, would be cool to work this event or imagine being there. But the second, as you say, you think about the actual logistics of having to be there and do every other part of the event and turn up at 7 a.m. and do production. It suddenly becomes a lot less appealing, if you know what I mean. Like you're cherry picking the best part of the experience. But actually, I agree. Like to actually work the event it's more hassle than it's worth at this point in time. So those days have gone. Like the point is,
the money's not even good anymore.
No, exactly. So like, for example, I would do like the next CS major in like Copenhagen if they asked, but that's more for like history. It's not because like the event itself would be so insane and the money would be so like you're saying. I'd more do that for legacy, you know. But even then, I want to do it as a one-off. I don't want to do like the other problem as well is the world of events is you work an event every month. Like that's too much for me. I don't want that in my life at this point.
It's also that, you know, if you can make your own content and have it be successful, you guys know this from all the co-streamers and everything. It's just much better to have your own brand than it is to be reliant on publishers that can cut you for any reason at any time, even no reason at all. Just decide, we don't need this guy anymore. So it's just not a good use of time to really work with them because there's no reward. There's no loyalty from any of these
Same
people.
time, shout out to all those fans who say that when you don't get hired to events, you're completely irrelevant and no one will ever care about you again. Because checks notes, I haven't worked in events since 2021, and I just checks other set of notes, interviewed the GOAT. Oh, okay then, cool. So put that back down there. By the way, you got to hand it to me, guys. What, two things. One, my philosophy that aside from my patrons who can see, like, who I've interviewed and stuff, I don't tell publicly that I've got something coming. I didn't tell you that Simple interview was coming. One, it does mean you never get any false expectations. And two, that was way more effective when I dropped that trailer the day before on Christmas Day when it was like tomorrow at 6 p.m. or whatever, like the goats versus the goat. Like that was the shit. You have to admit, like I am box office. I know what I'm doing. Christmas. Boys, understand that. Of course.
A lot of movies get unnecessarily remade. Name two movies that definitely need a remake.
Ooh, need a remake. That's interesting.
Can we have a real...
Essentially, like we're picking out some sort of a flawed gem here almost, right, that we could make better if we remade it, right?
Can we have a real version of The Count of Monte Cristo, please? Can we have like a real one? No one actually does that movie right. I don't know why you need to change the end for it to be a reunion with Dantes and Mercedes. Like, I don't know why people need to do that. Usually they can get like up to the end of the imprisonment part right, and then it just completely goes off the fucking rails after that point in time. I would love to have a real version of that. Thorin, I was watching the director's cut of Troy the other night.
Okay. I actually think that's an underrated movie, man.
Well, I liked a lot of it. The end is incredibly stupid, and I would love to see a remake of that.
What's stupid on the end like?
Well, it's not anything like the Iliad, number one. And like Achilles is in love with Briseis and, stupidly is like chasing through the burning city of Troy after her, which is, he dies before Troy even falls. And it's just rather silly.
Oh, you mean because it's just nothing like the actual book, right? Fair enough.
And it's also like not what Achilles would do. And also his like stupid sex slave love interest.
That was a stupid angle for sure.
It was a really dumb angle. So the ending could have definitely been a lot better. But in terms of actually like showing, the Bronze Age combat and, the spectacle of it, it was great. The actors were fucking great in that movie. What a well-cast movie.
Because the reason I was shocked by you saying that is I thought you meant the literal ending. Because I actually think the literal ending where they copy those lines from the end of the Iliad about like I was there in like the age of of actor. I thought that was fucking mega powerful. But I agree. The actual like takeover of Troy is a bit shit. That part is stupid for sure. Even the part where they almost make it like a cynical thing for real, Monty. Like they're flexing the sequel, the Aeneid, where they're like,
oh, it's
like
so cringe, dude.
It's like, no, go this way, like something mad like that, like
no,
to the fucking.
They're like fleeing the city. He's like, go this way. They're like, what's your name, lad? And he's like, I'm Aeneas, and you're like, come on, man, like it's so cringe.
You for real have just had like Palpatine, like, and we'll pay close attention to your career. Like that shit from the Phantom Menace. It's almost like that, and it's so whack. You just reminded me of that as well.
Yeah, I'm surprised you remembered that because I was like shouting at my TV when he's like, and what's your name, boy? I'm Aeneas. I'm like, oh, come on, dude. Like, you introduced this character for this stupid one line to like tease a sequel. They also never made an Odyssey, which I think is super weird. Like, we got robbed of a Sean Bean Odyssey movie, guys. Fuck.
No, that would be the shit, wouldn't it? Yeah.
I'm actually surprised that never got made just because Troy made like $500 million. It made a lot of money. Troy made a lot of money. Okay. It made like $500 million against like $170 million budget. So I'm really shocked we never got the Odyssey with Sean Bean after that. Because I understand why we didn't get any more Master and Commander because the movie didn't make enough money, even though it was fucking great. But I am sad we never got the Sean Bean Odyssey. But anyway, I would remake Troy because like I want that movie to be good. And it could have been better than it was.
I mean, along similar lines, it's actually very similar lines, but just making me think of this. I do think one of the historical epics that completely missed is the fucking Oliver Stone Alexander one, where he had like Colin Firth as Alexander. Like the concept of that, you could do so much with that, man. I think Oliver Stone's a mega director. Like, dude, there's so much you could do with an Alexander movie. But like, if you ever watch it, it's just like a very modeled, like messy film. They don't really sort of seem. Again, they also it seemed like they almost like make the central point of the movie him like having some sort of like homoerotic love with one of like his fucking like generals or something. Like that just didn't really work as like the central fucking theme of the emotion of the film or whatever. Like to me, that, and it's kind of like what you said about the Troy one. The real mistake they're doing here is they're just doing a cynical like cookie cutter approach to movies where you've got to have a certain love interest and that's the tension, right? Whereas like if you think of the characters we're talking about, so in real life, Alexander the Great, or in the case of Troy, Achilles, these are more supposed to be like avatars of great ideals of like virtue and stuff. They're not really supposed to be people trapped in the soap opera of like, what about this? I want to fuck this person. Like that's kind of a bit mundane for me. So I would just make it way more epic. Here's another thing, by the way. If I remade a movie like Alexander, you actually want to play up the sort of mystique and the epicness. You don't want to make it too like everyday. You want to make it fantastical, in my opinion. So I'd remake something like that.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Achilles was definitely in the drama, but it should have been with Patroclus, right? His cousin that he almost certainly had a homosexual relationship with, not about the woman. Like that's the weird part, because he does flip out when Patroclus dies, right? And that's what gets him to kill Hector, right? So I would have just rather have more of that. I don't watch American football, but find the Pat McAfee show entertaining. What is your opinion of him / the show? I think it's good.
The problem with that show I have is this, which is like, it has some really funny moments. I actually think he's a very entertaining character.
Yeah.
But I personally find that show, because it's sort of like, if you notice, the vein they're trying to lead into, Monty, is the sort of Monday morning sports talk show approach of like, hey guys, here we are today with we got the fucking crazy rumor guys. You know, they've always got like the 3 extra guys, and we're like, who the fuck are these guys? Like, the problem with that is, I'm just not, like, for me, that's a bit like, there's too much fat on it, as it were, you know. Like, if they trimmed it down and made it more like a show like Inside the NBA with a segment, I could watch it, but I find them too long, mate. Like, they're like an hour long, every one of those podcasts. So like, if someone links me a clip, I'll watch that if they have like some interesting comment from Aaron Rodgers or some crazy, but I can't watch an hour a day or whatever. It's too much for me. So in theory, I'm in favor of it. In theory, in practice, I just don't watch it that much.
Yeah,
it's all good though.
There's too many like extra gremlins in the studio. You know what I mean? There's so many extraneous people. They're just like popping up all the time.
Like a radio show, they'll just be like, "Oh, hey, you know, Bill here is a great fan of the Ravens," and I'm like, "Why do I fucking care?" You know what I mean? Like, if you're actually in a bar, that'd be great. I don't give a fuck. I'm here for Pat McAfee, not some fucking guy in the back who works the fucking mics. Like, I know all in the room, you have to keep their vibe going, but I don't care. I'm not in the room, am I? So. That's me. This is why I while out. Right, next question.
Thorin mentioned in an earlier question that the movie he most wanted to see this year was Napoleon. Oh, I actually just saw that. What did you think of it? I like the battle scenes and the infertility angle to the movie, personally.
What did you think? Because obviously, by the way, I don't know if you know this, Monty, but this movie got mega flamed because the problem is a lot of people in like the political sphere hoped it was going to be like a faithful Napoleon epic, whereas like the joke is everyone says like, well, this is what you get when a Brit makes a movie about Napoleon, because apparently they like cock him or whatever. Is it true? Was it underwhelming? I haven't watched it yet.
It's good. Look, this shouldn't have been one movie, is basically the answer to it. I'm looking forward to the inevitable, like, Ridley Scott. He said he has like a 5-hour director's cut that I would be very interested in seeing. The movie is already like
notoriously Ridley Scott movies are better with the director's cut. Obviously, like fucking Blade Runner, Kingdom of Heaven. There's loads
Kingdom of Heaven sucks. The original version, Kingdom of Heaven. The original version is not very good. The director's cut is very good.
It's way better. Yeah, it's way better.
So. I think Napoleon, I'm a big Ridley Scott fan. I'm a big Joaquin Phoenix fan. I think Joaquin Phoenix is fucking amazing in this movie. I think he absolutely crushes this role. I think he is just ridiculously good. I think it needed to be probably 3 movies at least, because it's just the entire time period. Okay.
Did they try and cover all of his major battles and stuff?
Yes, it's literally his whole life.
In one movie? Holy shit.
No, it's too much. So what happens is it starts before Toulon, when he's still a relatively low-ranking military commander, and then it goes through his second exile and his death.
Okay.
So like
fucking hell, I didn't realize that
on St. Helena. So it is a really, really long period of time that they're covering. And because I know the history, it was one of those things where I had a similar conversation with my wife when we went out to the theater to watch it that I had with her about Dune, the Villeneuve Dune movie, which is like, I kind of enjoyed it because it was like all the cool elements of Dune parading around on a screen, but like I know what mentats are, but they don't explain mentats in the movie. And I can kind of fill in all the character relationships in my head because I know what they're supposed to be, even though the movie does a bad job of presenting a lot of the character relationships. Like if you didn't know Dune, I think that movie of Dune is quite poor. If you do know Dune, it's still kind of bad, but like it's more forgivable because I can stitch together everything. And so if you're not familiar with the French history, such as, you know, it goes through the French Revolution, and like if you don't know immediately,
holy
like
shit.
who Robespierre is,
okay.
Yeah, who Robespierre is, like what's going on with the political situation. They don't really do a good job of explaining the 100 Days either, which is the period between his first exile and him coming back to France and then reclaiming the throne. They don't really explain that. You don't really get a sense of Napoleon's relationship to the people, as like you don't really understand why he's popular. Whereas like if you know French history, you understand that he was extremely popular with the French people during that time period, which is why he was able to take over the country again so easily after, you know, escaping from his first exile. So I don't know. The movie focuses mostly on his relationship with Josephine. And the infertility angle is an interesting one, but it is a personal drama between Josephine and Napoleon that I find very interesting, that plays out in the background, like as in the foreground of his career, his military and leadership career. But you don't get a lot of the political elements explained. It's mostly about him and Josephine, which is fine because, like I said, to cover that time period, you have to make some kind of a choice about what element of his life you're focusing on. You can't really like explore all of the politics and the war and the leadership, and have his relationship with Josephine fleshed out. So Ridley Scott chose the Josephine angle, and I think that part of it works really well. It is objectively beautiful, even though I know a lot of people complain about the depictions of some of the battles, especially Austerlitz. It is gorgeous the way that it's shot, and the battle sequences that you get are very, very pretty, and you get a very, I think, bleak sense of the war at the time. So I think it's worth seeing. I'm excited for the 5-hour edition. I'm glad I saw it in a movie theater because I do think that it has some of that kind of war epicness to it. And I think that Joaquin Phoenix's performance is really good. Is it the best historical film I've ever seen? No, but you know, trying to cover his entire life in a 3-hour movie is really fucking hard. And I wish, you know, it's another one of those things where it's like, I wish Dune had been a miniseries instead of a movie. Like, I wish it had been a 10-episode series. And I wish this had been a 10-episode series as well. That's how I feel about it.
The thing is, I haven't watched it yet, but the key thing is this. I will watch it, and I don't care that everyone has flamed it, like I said, and say it gets cocked, it's ruined, and it's a sellout. Because here's the thing. I already like all Ridley Scott movies. Like, Ridley Scott's somewhere where I paid for the ticket. I'm going to take the ride. Yeah. Like, I don't care what this person directs. I'll always give it a try. It's just had too many good movies. And also, like you're saying, like, I imagine there's elements to it maybe I'll enjoy that they won't. Like, for example, I think part of what a lot of people were getting mad at was stupid stuff like, oh, but like, look how stupid the battle sequences. It's like, I'm not watching the movie for military history, guys. Like, that's a different fucking genre. Exactly. Like you're getting, that would be like watching like a racing movie and you know about cars. So you're like, oh, look at the way the gearbox works. That's not how it works. Like, I don't know that, mate. Like, for me, it's like car goes fast, put the foot down. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not worried about that detail. So I'll definitely watch it. I did think, though, while you were answering that, of another movie, though, for the remake one. I'll tell you what, well, this is a shocker. This will blow people's minds. I actually think a movie that if you remade could be way better. This will blow people's minds, dude. Is that first one of the shitter Star Wars sequels? You know, The Force Awakens? Dude, there were some elements in that actually could have been straight fire. You know the whole thing about how Kylo Ren, they set it up that he had the opposite problem to the others. The others were Jedis who had to pull towards gain worldly power by using the Sith Force, right? And then his shit was like he's a Sith, but he has this weird thing in where he like secretly pulls to the light. Like, that could have been so interesting how you could handle that. Even the whole idea, by the way, that like you kill Han Solo, like spoilers, obviously. Like this, you could have actually made a fucking amazing like shake Shakespearean tragedy out of this. But the way they actually pulled it out, like, was just obviously a bit half-assed, and then they ruined it with all the side. The actual, like, central, like I'm saying, there was something you were working there, dude. That could have been interesting.
Kylo Ren is a great character. He's a great character. And also, Adam Driver is fucking great in those movies. Like, he's the best part. His character's the best part, and he's the best part of those films. And it makes me super sad, like you're saying, that they wasted the potential of that. Because I agree, it could have been like Shakespearean family drama, playing out against the background of war and scope, but it ended up just being
think about like the like interesting like asymmetry you'd have done with the like Jedi plot with Luke and his father. You could have done something really brilliant with that, I feel like, but instead it was just thrown. It's like a throwaway movie, isn't it? It's like no one will even remember that as like an important movie. Bad. It's just whatever, in it. Right, next.
But yeah, Napoleon. Look, and I'll end this about Napoleon. The reason why everyone is so critical is because this is obviously a super big swing, right? Nobody would have cared about this movie if it was about a different subject, but the scope of this film is just so fucking ambitious, and because it's Ridley Scott, people are going to shit all over it. It's a pretty good movie, guys. It's not Ridley Scott's best movie. It's not a perfect movie, but I think people just shit on it because they're French, or they have, everybody has their different perception about how the Napoleon movie should be shot. If it didn't have Josephine in it, it was all about his military and political career, people would have just shit on it for it not being about Josephine. Like, you can't win. Yeah. Like, you can't win in this scenario. So I enjoyed it for what it was. What is your favorite and most disliked moment in esports of 2023?
Ooh, 2023. My favorite and my most disliked. Okay. All right. I mean, the disliked one, I think, is actually easy. I mean, the joke is all idiots are going to tell you what? No, actually, the disliked one's easy. It was that whole fucking LCS walkout saga. Because like I said, Monty, the thing I found infuriating about that entire thing was that everyone ignored the day-to-day, that moment reality of where esports was in the American ecosystem. And they talked about these. It was this, by the way, that was the ultimate example of why I despise a lot of like commie/left-wing thinking. Because it's all just fucking abstract, mate. It's all just like, but this thing should be, and people should have these things, and we should do it. It's like, no, forget hypotheticals. What is the reality of today?
Right.
Like, what are the harsh realities, and how do we deal with them like now?
Right? It's wishful thinking.
I'm not against the idea that, like, the LCS should communicate differently with teams and players, and do players have, but in that moment, that really was the fucking American League of Legends players who are millionaires and aren't even vaguely that good in an insanely inflated market demanding even more rights and privileges. Like, I just felt like it was very jarring. Like, it's like the abstract was like interfering with the reality in a way that was like night and day for me. So I hated that whole saga. I thought we never even got, even though we talked about them, I thought people never really engaged with the bigger topics. They were too stuck on these things of like, but it's a disgrace, and the players, and wow, this is historic, and it was all about it was like the movie version instead of the reality of what we were dealing with. And then I don't even know for the favorite one. I'm trying to think what my favorite moment would be. You give me one of yours. What's one of yours favorite or disliked? What would you go with?
I mean, frankly, my most disliked, almost all my shit these days, I don't really care that much about, I don't really have that big of an emotional reaction to stuff that's going on in esports outside of LFN at this point in time, because like, the way that I view it is that we're just building our own little castle that's kind of immune to the storms on the outside. We're on our own little fucking island with our big ass walls, and nobody's going to come fuck with our shit. And so whatever happens out there, like, I don't really have that bad of an emotional reaction to it anymore, because I am now an observer to all of this, and I'm no longer stuck in the middle of all the bullshit. You know what I mean? So I will say that probably the hardest part of this last year for me was, for LFN, we thought we had like a major investor coming in, and due to the nature of venture capital, like the fund that gave us approval, didn't have they were waiting on funding themselves. And that still might happen, by the way, guys. This is just how VC worked in 2023. But like, that was really fucking hard. And like, it has been very difficult to bootstrap LFN, but on the other side of that, it seems like now, especially with a lot of advertisers that you guys have helped support, we're really turning a corner on that front. And so it feels a lot better now. So, I mean, frankly, like, that was tough, but we made some adjustments, and, everybody on the talent and production side just kind of picked themselves up and kept on plowing forward, and here we are. So that's been great, honestly. And like, I feel like we're in a much better place these days. So, I'm anticipating we'll have some more high times ahead. So, I mean, that's it. Like the things that get me emotionally now are just honestly to do with LFN and not really so much about, like, everything else is just kind of it's like watching a play that's unfolding before me. I'm not an actor in the play anymore. I just get to sit there and heckle it from the audience or applaud it or whatever the fuck is going on, which is a great place to be in, I think.
Oh, by the way, for my most favorite thing, I'll just say, since you did more like non-esports stuff, I'll just say I actually think my favorite one, since it's a league-specific podcast, I thought MSI was dope.
That was great. Like, that's a great one.
That. My first thought was, one, we could have had this for 10 years, but then two, at least we got it now. Like, that's fucking sick. Like, the joke is, I really am looking forward to MSI every year if you have that format. It's going to be dope. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I really like the LEC new format too. I think new formats in LoL were actually one of the high points of this year overall. And maybe I'm not holding out, but LCS has not announced their format yet, even though the league is starting in 2 weeks. I guess technically 18 days on the 20th. That's when it's supposed to start, 20th of January. But maybe there's a possibility we could have a cool new format in LCS as well. That would be fun. So I think new formats were definitely a highlight for 2023. That's a good call. Who would win an epic diss rap battle between MonteCristo and Thorin? Probably Thorin, I would say. The experienced caster with a theater literature background or the esports himself. I think Thorin would win, personally.
Well, at least because I'm a fan of battle raps. I actually ironically know the format as well. But
yeah, I don't know anything about battle rapping.
I think you could pull it off though, like the actual, like as he says, the theatrical element. I think he'd be good.
Oh yeah, I look, I could learn, but right now I would definitely lose, and I think that's more your skill set than mine. What is your all-time team of worst players to win Worlds by role?
The problem is, if we do this, we should do it for real, because we've done it as a meme, but like, let's be real, like a bunch of the players we put in the meme, like the joke is, I don't really know if Beryl would be the worst. Like, surely there's some player that was worse than him that won Worlds. You know what I mean? Was he really the worst?
Yeah. Look, I think
like, surely Beryl's better than Mistake from TPA, if you know what I mean. Come on, isn't he?
I just watched Mistake play again. Baolan
wasn't great. I mean, he was carried by one champion pretty much, right? Baolan's up there. So there's support.
Baolan's way up there. I don't think Beryl could win because he actually did win with two different teams. So I think he just automatically disqualifies himself.
That's just too good an accomplishment in it.
But I think Baolan's like way up there.
I was saying Crown for mid though. Look, obviously Crown in the previous year was mega, but the year that he won was the Malzahar year. We're going to say Crown mid, are we? Is that the mid laner that wins? Because mid's almost pretty stacked role, surely.
Yeah, almost certainly. You could take like probably Gimgoon in top lane.
A good shout, yeah. Gimgoon. Because again, even though the meme is kinging, he did smurf the final. Like, I can't hear him.
He was final MVP. Cracked. And he was legitimately finals MVP.
He was good. Like, look, in real life, he's a meme, but like the Gimgoon guy was just a fucking, like, the joke is he just watched people win Worlds, didn't he? Like, we've only got jungler and ADC now. So who's the jungler? What's the worst jungler to ever? Right, look. The temptations to go Bengi, but it's a bit too mean, innit? Come on. Maybe Bengi when he won in the later years. Maybe when he won in like season 6, when he shouldn't even have been in the lineup. Yeah, maybe that one. Maybe season 6 Bengi goes in there. Even though, by the way, I noticed Bengi is actually the like patient zero for all the Cancer T1 narratives. It's like they started with the Bengi as the GOAT jungler and the right hand of God, and they never stopped since then with these terrible narratives. So what about ADC though? ADC is quite hard actually. Who's a bad ADC? Oh, Ghost. I guess you could do that. True.
I mean, Ning would be another jungler, I think.
By the way, all I'm going to say is, guys, listen to this. This is like the nightmare fuel, wealthy industrialists, get me some Worlds winners, lineup super team, right? So it was $16 million for the JDG lineup. How much would this lineup cost, guys? We'll crack it out with Gimgoon top lane, Season 6, Bengi Jungle.
Warning.
Mid lane is season 7 crown on Malzahar only. ADC is Ghost and support is Baolan. That actually is an ass team. Like the team is actually so fucking bad. And it's actually all Koreans except Baolan. So like that's actually or Ning if you do that. But like it's actually absolute ass, that team. That is actually really bad. Like that team doesn't even work. It doesn't even have a winning lane, dude. It has Malzahar plus a tank top laner plus Ghost as ADC. Like it has nothing. This team's garbage, isn't it? I don't know. It's actually amazing how bad it is. Because you would think by the way, doesn't that team there just invalidate the idea that winning worlds is the be all end all? Because these people really did win worlds. Remember, Monty, they and Trophy have never won worlds, mate. Like they're leagues above some of these motherfuckers. Like, come on. These guys are bombs.
Ghost was in 2 finals. Bengi is a 3-time world champion.
Yeah, true that.
That's funny. I can't believe Gimgoon's a world champion. That's such a fucking meme.
That is wild. Especially because the other thing is, they don't know like we do way back in the day when he was on like fucking Zenix or something.
I know,
like,
right?
Back in fucking 2013 or whatever. Like, I know it's mental, isn't it? The idea he later won worlds is so nuts, isn't it? It's not even possible.
I just love that, like 2019 was when I started, that's when we did the Summoning Insight in the studio with AT&T, which was FPX this year. And that's like when I had been in Overwatch for a couple of years and I was starting to get back into LoL again. And I was like, wait, Gimgoon's winning worlds? What the fuck?
Mad, isn't it? Yeah. It's up there for sure.
If LCS ever moves to a 3-split format, do you think it would be good to have an NA versus EU exclusive tournament in the middle of winter and spring? Yes, awesome. Of course it would be. Yeah. Except not Rift Rivals. Rift Rivals was shit. Like, do a good format, and then do the fucking Asia tournament. Like Rift Rivals wasn't a bad idea at its highest concept, which is like have the Asian teams play against each other, have NA and EU, so you don't have to fly everybody every which way, right? And you can finish it in a shorter amount of time. We just needed a good format and a reason, like weight behind Rift Rivals, right? I think in theory it's good.
It's like what used to drive me crazy was we obviously had those IEM tournaments, but the stupid thing is Riot themselves artificially hamstrung those tournaments because you know this, Monty. Like they wouldn't, if you had an 8-team tournament, you weren't really allowed to have 8 LCS or LEC teams. You had to have like 5 or 6, and then you had to have like, a Turkish team and a Brazilian team and a team from fucking, like the equivalent of an ERL team or something like that, like they used to always make you have like a more limited field. If you'd have just had an IEM, like those IEM kind of 8 days, Monty, but it had just been the top 8 Western teams, those would be bangers. Who the fuck wouldn't enjoy that tournament? It'd be mega.
Yeah.
The problem with Rift Rivals was just the format was kind of silly because the problem is like they were just trying to make it like the Ryder Cup or the Davis Cup or something, weren't they, Monty? Where it's like you're all on the same side, but you're also not, but you aren't. It's like, oh, what is this garbage? Like that doesn't work. That format doesn't work. Like you do want the fans to be NA versus EU, but you want the teams to be separate and battle each other,
Right. And think about all the fun content elements. I mean, you already have seen those like NA versus EU, like rap battles with like Captain Flowers and the LEC casters. I mean, you could make some really fucking fun content between the casters for those regions as well. I think it'd be great. If Thorin is esports and Richard is esports Jesus, what is Monty's esports character title? What? Well, if we're the Trinity, I would have to be the esports Holy Ghost, right? That's the implication that you're making. esports Jesus, and esports Ghost.
Just esports itself. Yeah.
I don't know. I think that your implication is fine. I think the implication of the question is fine. That's it. We actually didn't have that many questions this week. We got to them all. So there you go. Watch more LFN content this year, guys. Actually, you know what? I'll say this. My favorite esport, to go back to the previous question, my favorite, now that we're done with 2023, my favorite esports part of 2023 is that LFN content did twice as many views and twice as many viewed hours as it did in 2022. So we had 100% growth. That's my favorite part, guys. Thank you very much for watching the shows, either on the CS channel or the LOL channel or our new culture channel or the sports channel that we've got going on right now. And we'll be back with more regular Four Horsemen this year. That's going to be in the pipeline because that just needs to happen, basically. And we'll be back with all the rest of the shows. So we'll see you for another episode of SI next week.